Good evening, and we'll call the Board of Supervisors to order. And order of business will be an invocation where we'll hear from Tim Sackett, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. You can rise.
Thank you once again, Chairman Fiedler, and all of the members of the board. I've been living a life filled with Christ in my life for over 30 years. But something happened this past Sunday that just reinvigorated, and I've got a new life philosophy. I woke up Sunday morning with hot air balloons straight up over my house because I live just west of EP Rock over by O'Connell Funeral Home. And when those balloons are silent up there, you can talk to them. I mean, they're only 150, 200 feet away, so I yelled at the guy and I said, "Have fun." And he yelled back and said, "I already am." And I thought, geez, why would you have to tell the guy in a hot air balloon floating along to have fun when he already is? And so I said to my wife, I said, next time somebody tells me to have fun, I'm just going to tell them I already am. And so late last night when I'm trucking down the road or I'm unloading some freight at 5 a.m., I'm thinking, am I having fun? Yes, I am. And there's so many things in our life. I think about the apostles and their persecution and Jesus and the persecution. And, this month we start the Lent season leading up to the celebration of what Jesus went through for us. And how is it that the Bible says that it was for the joy set before him that Jesus endured so much? And Paul's chained in prison and says, even in my chains I rejoice. And I think, how hard is my life? How hard is your life? And so we have to take satisfaction and joy in what we do and who we are and how we carry ourselves, because what happens when others are not happy with what you do? Just think of how farmers, everybody enjoys a good steak, but they don't like the smell in the air around them, because of what the farmers do. Or, people like all their stuff delivered, but they don't like it when I block the left lane passing slower traffic. It's just, I'm concerned about how sensitive we've all become, I guess is probably what I'm trying to say. And we haven't faced most of what other people have faced and still found joy in what they endured. So I'm here to encourage you to find joy in whatever you're doing, whether it's here for the county population or your own job, your own home. Let's have fun and let's just say, I already am. So the satisfaction and the joy is still yours, no matter if somebody's trying to take it away or ruin it. The satisfaction is all yours. And we can all finish off by what Paul said. The Apostle Paul said, I thank God for it. So let's pray. Father in heaven, help us to thank you for the joy that we have, because we all know if we continue to try to find all kinds of accolades and joys and prompts through others, it's not going to work all the time. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But if you are the Lord of heaven, if you are applauding us, then what could stop us from keep on going? So let's have joy and satisfaction. Let us find life that is fun and enjoyable, and let others know that I'm not here to have fun. I already am having fun. So help us to find that in our life, day by day. In these meetings and outside of these meetings, let the satisfaction and joy belong to each individual. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Tim. And we really hope we do have fun, joy, and satisfaction tonight. Thank you.
Good.
We'll have our
Glad
pledge
to
of
hear.
allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have our roll call, and I'll just note that Supervisors Anderson and Osnes are excused, and we've got Supervisor Leaf and Long joining us by Zoom. Roll call.
Supervisor Lind.
Present.
Supervisor Long.
I'm here.
Supervisor Leaf.
Present.
Supervisor Cook.
Present.
Supervisor Adams.
Present.
Supervisor Burning. Present. Supervisor Attino.
Present.
Supervisor Fiedler.
Present?
Supervisor Counter.
Present.
Supervisor Hanson.
Here.
Supervisor Shirley.
Present.
Supervisor Telejohn. Present. Supervisor Carlson.
Present.
Supervisor Barkalow.
Present.
Supervisor Swanepoel.
Present.
Supervisor Van Summeren.
Present.
And Supervisor Ramberg.
Present.
We have a quorum, and is there any public comment? Seeing no members of the public for public comment, we'll move on to the first item of business, our consent agenda. I heard of nobody wants to move anything from the consent agenda, so do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? From somebody? Let's say Supervisor Counter, I think, was first. I think Supervisor Hanson seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. The consent agenda is adopted. We have a presentation, but before we get to the presentation, I'd like to call on Supervisor Telejohn, who chaired the Broadband Committee, to give a brief overview of what his committee did, and then he'll turn to Administrator Witt to introduce our speaker.
It's going to be very brief. We met several times during the past year, looking at broadband in the county. There was probably, nine of us on the committee, and we planned to have, we voted to have our county map to see what's served, what's underserved, and what speeds we are getting in the county. So as of now, we're not meeting anymore, but I think it was very fruitful. So I'll turn it over to Ken.
Thank you, Supervisor Telejohn. So tonight, Mitch Gordon from Hometown Fiber, he's going to share a presentation that he has that reviews the product that resulted in the study that was accomplished. So Mitch, if you want to start sharing, you can take it from there.
All right, thank you. Yep. Share it up here. My name's Mitch Gordon. I'm executive officer here at Hometown Fiber. I also handle all of our broadband mapping, GSI work. So I'm kind of working with Ken and John there on this, and I know we went through this before, and so I'm not sure what everybody has saw, but I'm just going to kind of run through an overview on kind of a little bit everything that we did and reasons why we did it and how we came up with our conclusions. We kind of went through with some of the existing information out there. We gathered it, collected it, reviewed it. We performed our what we call our field verifications. That's going out in the field, and then we, based on that, we evaluated what the service level at that property would be, and then we kind of put everything into a GSI map layer, so everything's easily visible and see the overall picture. There's a lot of broadband data out there. Some of it's wonderful, some of it's not so wonderful. It doesn't always exist in the same places. Cities can have their own, the county, the state, federal, FCC. So we kind of took a good look at all of that information, kind of heavily on the FCC with their new map that they produced, which is, very helpful. So we took a look at all that, then we did actually go out in the field throughout the county. We drove up and down every road, and we were actually looking for the infrastructure. Most of the existing maps are based on other reports, what ISPs report, and they're kind of reporting the actual service. So we went and, if they show there's fiber to the home there, then we went to try to find the infrastructure that supports that. And the stuff we're most looking at was the fiber optic infrastructure, the cable TV, the coaxial cable, DSL, digital subscriber line, which is, the telephone line. This is what we're actually looking for, and you've probably all seen these things all over the place in the road ditches in your front yard and intersections, and this is what we were collecting. We collected a little over 9,000 data points throughout the county. About 6,800 of those were actually fiber. There can be a couple different types of fiber. There could be fiber that actually serves the home or the property, the business, and then there's some other fiber out there that is like going to a cell tower or kind of more of a dedicated purpose of it. We did collect the cable TV, which is a little over 1,300 data points. And those are generally in your more populated areas, your cities and stuff. And then a DSL being your telephone lines. Most every property in the county has a telephone line going to it. We didn't collect every single piece of infrastructure out there, kind of enough to support what we were looking. And on the interactive map that we put together, I'll show it here after we get done here, but each of these data points, you can click on them and it'll open up this pop-up, but it'll tell you, what type of field item that was, if it's fiber, coax, DSL. We'll have the owner's name if we knew it. Did our best to get all the owners on there. Some of the infrastructure out there isn't labeled, so we did our best to get everything. It'll show a timestamp of when that was taken, any notes that we had, and then we'll have photographic evidence of that. So after collecting all this field data, we went through and I think we had four or five field workers out there, and it took approximately 7 days to complete. And again, that was driving up and down every road, finding all these and GPS pinning them and photographing them and identify them. Then when that was completed, we went back through all of these 9,000 plus pins and just kind of re-verified that everything was captured correctly in the field and double check that. And then we took this field data with the existing data and we kind of determined what is actually available at that property, based on the combination of the two data points. And then our service level, that's actually per property. So there's a pin on every house, every building or livable structure that may have the service. And kind of color coded them, and then if you get into the overall view, everything in green is what we would consider fiber to the premise. Um, Everything in yellow is the cable TV, the coax service, and everything in red is the DSL, the phone line. Now this data was from October, sort of middle to the end of October when we collected the field data. I'm guessing due to the mild winter that we've been having, they've probably been out working or still working or starting to work. And what we found is St. Croix County and the ISPs in the area are doing a great job at getting fiber out there. Some of the other counties that we've done mapping for like this, it's pretty much the opposite. 75% of the county is in the red. So you have some small pockets in and around these areas. Get a little bit more rural out here in some of these littler pockets, but we've seen a lot of active. We did postpone the field portion of it because there was a lot of new installations going in, and we kind of wanted to capture all those. That's kind of that. And if we jump into the actual interactive map, this is a little project web page we created for you. If you've seen it or not, but you can actually get into the interactive part of the map where you can move around, zoom. You can come in here, you can change the base map to something different if you choose. This little stack layer icon up here, this is how you can open and close. So we have our property service level and our field assets. You can kind of break them down and shut different things off and on these. But there again, if you click on any one of the pins, you can get into different what they are with photos. And that's all the field asset, the infrastructure. And we can get into the property service levels. There you can zoom into detail and get right down to the property level on that. We can also do it with the owners. Shut that one off. Kind of identified all the possible owners there are. I can kind of color code that and and kind of see the lines in the areas that the different owners are providing service for. That's kind of a quick overview of anything. If there's any questions, I'll certainly be glad to answer those.
Supervisor Burning. Oh, by the way, thank you, Mr. Gordon. Supervisor Burning.
Yeah, thank you for this. So are those plot points that you have there, these little data points, are those either, so like when you come across that node, that fiber, that pole that's sticking out of the ground, are you finding that those are splice points? Or are those just checkpoints for long haul fiber, or what? I mean, because a lot of it, what we're looking at is how can we build off of this fiber, or how can we get other carriers to build off of this fiber? And if we are looking at only long haul checkpoints, then I don't know. But can you answer, do you understand what I'm asking in a sense?
I think so. I mean, a lot of this, if you get into here, this is some CenturyLink fiber. This is probably serving some. So a lot of the DSL the internet through the telephone line, which like is running in the gray here. They have equipment out there. Let's see if I can find oops, sorry. There's equipment out there that converts fiber back down to DSL. So like some of these areas you may see a line like here, but it's going to one of these pieces of equipment and then it's going back out to the telephone line from those areas. So like this particular area was the CenturyLink doing that, but if you get into
So I guess that's CenturyLink. Is that legacy, like CenturyLink, like old school? I can't remember what the name of the company was, but basically the incumbent local carrier that was bought out by somebody, or is this? What I'm asking is, is it possible for us to look at carriers to be able to build off of this fiber to the residents, or are these just checkpoints that is on a long haul route for CenturyLink going all the way back to the 511 building in Minneapolis or a data center somewhere?
More than likely, CenturyLink won't let somebody else do that. That's possible. And sometimes those are kind of those direct lines. They're going out there to provide the fiber optic for that DSL. It's not really built for a lot more. Explaining that enough, but some of those things are back then they were put in to provide that service. It wasn't like a fiber to the home. It was just providing service to that equipment out there to go over the DSL. But if you get into some of these other areas, see if I can find some here. Like this is Northwest Fiber. So they have a lot of fiber in the area. They just haven't got to this point yet. Maybe if we get back into the property level here, so all the green is fiber to the premise, fiber to the home. The red is still a DSL. They haven't got into this particular area, but they're around the area. So I would, the way it looks to me is they would be putting their own fiber in those areas. They just haven't quite got there yet.
Okay, thanks.
I guess in this area over here is a little bit more widespread, but some of these small pockets,
Supervisor
the
Ramberg?
service provider is, they'll be into that area very soon.
Supervisor Ramberg.
Thank you, sir. What does ISP stand for?
Internet service provider.
Supervisor.
Is it possible to access this map? Is it like GIS Extreme, or is it on a different database? Or?
Yeah, we have it hosted on see the link there. We have it hosted on our own website. So it's yourhometownfiber.com/St. Croix -county.
And Mitch, we're also working with your team to get the GIS waypoints, and we're going to be incorporating that into a GIS layer that we have at the county, on the county's website, so WGX Extreme or something to that effect.
Yeah, so our project page is, something you can use in the meantime and, until you get your own pages put up or.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Gordon? If they're not, I'm going to call in. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
I do have a question.
Bob Long.
Okay, so I'd like to know what your conclusion in looking at these maps is, we had the impression that our coverage was not very good in St. Croix County, and looking at these colorful maps outside of the red, it gives me the impression that we have fairly good coverage. Is that not the case? And what would be your conclusion in looking at these maps?
I think you have very good coverage. Some of these small areas, there was some newer fiber being put in right around them. They just haven't, they weren't out to these areas when we were there and looked at it. But there was a lot, and there's, certainly looks like they will be out there. If they haven't been already, they will, probably this coming year, especially these little small pockets around. You get this bigger area over here. This is a little bit more rural, but there is some fiber going in around the areas. This may be, probably the area to focus on. I guess depending on who the actual providers are over here.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. I think Administrator Wood can add some remarks as well.
Yeah, that was the comments I was going to make, Chair Long. I was right along those lines. So I think the subcommittee, when we looked at this, we were happy with the results and the progress that we've made. In 2022, the county board had authorized $3 million. We had given out 8 grants across 8 different townships for that $3 million. We've paid out on 5 of those 8. We delayed this project as late as we could in the fall to capture as much of that data as possible. But there's still more fiber being put in. I've gone through, they're plowing fiber right now. So there's still more fiber going in, but I think the investment that the county made has provided really good results. I think if you put this in tandem with the state BEAD survey that recently came out, you can see the number of underserved or unserved properties. I think we're doing really well, and we're making good progress. So I think that's where we're at right now.
Supervisor Tino.
Thank you very much. Well, this is good news as far as I can see, because if the carriers themselves, the fiber optic people, are putting this money and some of the money that we already spent to good use, it looks like we may save money going in the future because we don't need to spend. I believe we spent $3 million worth of, like you said, and if I recall, we serviced 3,500 homes, not realizing that this also went to the townships, and the townships got to spread that out too. Am I correct with that statement at 3,500?
That sounds about right. I don't remember the exact number offhand, but
That's
it's probably
how I
pretty
remember
close.
it. And I remember doing the math and seeing it was an absolutely exorbitant amount of money per household that we spent. So I can understand the frustration of the people that are in the red, but it looks like to me the private providers can take up the slack now in going forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and our providers have written additional PSC grants for the next round. Those are due out, the awards are due out soon. But I know some of the red areas that you're seeing are areas that are already covered by some of our grants that just haven't finished yet. So it's going to continue to get better.
Supervisor Telejohn.
And just to address what Mr. Otino was saying is, that was a 25% matching grant that we awarded. The provider had to come up with the other 25%. Is that right? Yeah. And then there was still more money that they had to put all this in. So it's not just the $3 million.
Yeah, the $3 million leveraged $12 million in infrastructure.
If there are no other questions or observations, thank you, Mr. Gordon, for being with us tonight, and thank you, Supervisor Telejohn, for chairing that committee over the past couple of years. It's really appreciated. At this point, we'll turn to the county administrator for his financial report.
Let me pull the packet back up. All right, so the financial report is through the end of the year. There's still additional, mostly revenues that are still coming in. We get revenues late because we have to report all of our expenses through the end of the year and then get those grant reimbursements. So our revenues tend to lag right at the end of the year. So overall, you know, I normally paint a really rosy picture. 2023 maybe wasn't one of our best years ever. I know a lot of our insurance funds did finish in the red. The health insurance is probably going to be $1 million or more in the red. So the $3 million fund balance we had in the health insurance fund is going to take a large hit. And overall, though, looking at where we're at, I think we'll finish in the black, although I think you're going to see more departments that are finishing in the red. There was just, you know, when things come up, the county doesn't stop operating. We have to continue operating, whether the budget's there or not there. There's certain things that we have to do. Like the district attorney's office had $40,000 in witness fees. There were several murders that went to trial in 2023, and those are just expenses they're going to have. They budget like $2,000 for witness fees. In most years, they're right around that area. But when those expenses have to happen, they have to happen. So you're going to see that through a number of departments. But like I said, overall, I think we'll still be fine as a sum total for the county. So that's my financial report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on that, though.
Seeing none, we'll go to the second item. We'll call on the administrator again to give us an update on the spring referendum status, and then I'll call on Supervisor Counter after that.
Yeah, on the spring referendum, I just wanted to make sure that we put this on the agenda this month and maybe next month also, so that you can provide some additional input for us as we're trying to get that message out. And I'll call Adam Kostanek. He'll go over what we're doing to share information with the public so that the voters can have an informed decision in April.
Thanks, Ken, and thank you, supervisors, for your time. So I'm just going to give you a brief update on what we've done so far and what our plans are moving forward. So after during and after the 2023 referendum, we were looking at all of the information that was coming in, all the concerns that people were having, and I was collecting that information. So as we were developing the communications for the referendum here in spring of 2024, we were looking at how do we address all of the concerns that we were hearing. So some of those concerns were really, the big one was about the cost. So how did we address the cost? A lot of that is thanks to you. So you were looking at the budget, you and Administrator Witt and the department heads all assessed the needs of the positions. We were able to fund some of those positions through limited state funds, and we were able to get that ask significantly lower. So last year we were looking at $3.5 million increase to the levy. This year we're looking at, I don't want to get my number wrong here, so give me 1 second. Yeah, whatever Ken said. But how that works out to equalized value, so if you look at $25 per $100,000 of equalized value, down to $5. So that's a significant decrease. The other big thing that we were seeing was there was confusion around how the question was worded on the ballot. We really have limited control over that because it's required by the state. So there's only a small section of the question that we can update. We work to add more of a description within the question, and then we provided more context within the explanatory statement and also on the description on the website. So the confusion was people thought it was going to increase by that percentage every year, but we had addressed that to say that it's a one-time permanent increase. And then the other question we were seeing was people wanted to know what the breakdown of their tax dollars were, where their tax dollars were being spent. That is something that we had addressed during the budget. So if you remember back to that really thick budget packet that you all loved reading through, there's a graphic in there that explains how the tax dollars are divvied up with the county services. So we have that linked from the referendum page. We also go into detail about the county's mill rate and how that has an impact on the taxes and how we are at a historic low with the mill rate. So we collected all of that information. We met with department heads to develop the updated messaging for the positions and to collect supporting data. We're still in the process of collecting some of that supporting data, which is really going to help tell the story about that need, and I will share that information with you as I get it. Then we did set up, we took the information that we do have. I think a lot of you have been to the webpage already, but we set up a dedicated webpage for the referendum, and we will be building on that within the next week. And then we'll send our first press release later this week, and then we'll begin our scheduled outreach after that. So that scheduled outreach, that's really going to involve that media outreach, so press releases, social media posts, interviews with local media. We'll be most likely doing another sit-down with River Channel, so we'll have a video that we'll post on our website. We'll post any other media posts or articles on the webpage as well, so people can read those. Last year we did 11 public meetings and presentations. Those weren't attended very well, so we're looking at scaling those way back this time and focusing more on the methods of communication that seem to be working, and those were more of our digital communications. We'll be creating flyers. We're going to have information in the next 2 ADRC newsletters that are going out to make sure that we're reaching our aging and disability populations. And we are looking, well, we'll have display ads at the, if you walk into any one of our buildings, you'll see the TVs. So those are our digital displays. We'll have messaging in each one of our county buildings. We'll have posts on the employee internet for county employees because we want them to know what's going on. They're also voters here, and they can help share that message. The thing that we're still kind of working through some of the details on is we're looking at the possibility of doing another direct mail campaign. We did one last year. It was a postcard. This year, if we were to do it, it would be a little bit larger scale because I don't know how effective a postcard was. Some people were clicking on or scanning the QR code. Some people were typing in the short URL. But I think it would be helpful if we were going to do it to have more information as a one-sheeter that we would send out. Also looking at the possibility of doing display ads, targeted display ads, and that would be, we could look at geofencing the county so it's targeted specifically to the county or certain areas that's hard to reach, specifically rural areas. So that's really kind of our plan moving forward. I do want to hear some of your feedback. So whatever feedback we have, we get today, I'll incorporate that into the talking points. I've sent you all a list of information and talking points. I'll condense that down into a small enough packet to send you. Try not to give you a whole novel. And then hopefully that'll help you as you get questions from your constituents. Are there any questions?
Supervisor Ramberg.
Well, thank you. And I was able to go on the website off your link, and I started to find some of the things that I was looking for. Number one, thank you for the dollar figures on what it's costing me. You know, the $5 versus the $25. That's half of it. That's good. I like that. The other half is the list of positions. Now, either individually or as a package, what is that going to do for me? And what I found in there, like in each, when you click on it and you go in each, we have a paragraph for each position, which is great. And then in there, what I like seeing is where you say the co-responders began in March of 22, and then they're going to be going away because of the grant, right? Mm-hmm. And since then, these two co-responders assisted in 280 crisis calls. Well, what's that going to do for me not to have them? So are they going to go unanswered, or is that going to delay those? And that's what I'm looking for, is what are these positions giving me in regard to some numbers and some data? And whether it, I know we're still collecting data, but that's kind of where my head's going, and to pick the information that's going to taste good, or, you know, better than leaving a bad taste in my mouth. So, thank you.
And we are still collecting some of that information, and that's going to help really tell that story. As far as the crisis calls, those crisis calls aren't going to go unanswered. It's just the mental health co-responders are called by law enforcement, so they can help address mental health crises. So then our sheriff's office or local PD can respond to other issues that come up. So that's really just trying to look at who's the appropriate person to respond to specific calls, and without overburdening our local PD or our sheriff's office. Some of the other positions, you know, I think the data is really going to help tell the story about once we get some of those data points in there from the sheriff's office, for the corrections deputies and the investigators. That's going to help tell more of the story. But if you look at it, all of it boils down to public safety. So the mental health co-responders, that's public safety, that's people's well-being. Corrections deputies, that's looking at reducing recidivism, looking at making sure that people are prepared to re-enter society after being in jail. Investigators, that's looking at the justice side of things, making sure that we have strong evidence to hand off to the DA's office, or strong evidence to prosecute crimes. You look at the deputy clerk of court, you see the increase. That's a large number of cases. So in 2023, there were 9,573 cases filed in the clerk of court's office. That's it's an increase of over 600 cases. So that additional position will help address that increase and result in more timely correspondence with the public. So there's always kind of a piece where we're looking at the efficiency of it, but it's the public health, or not the public health, it's the public safety, and it's the mental health piece of it too. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
I'll call on Supervisor Hanson next. I think he had his hand up, but I also know Sheriff Knutson is with us, and if you ever care to add anything, Sheriff, feel free to come to the podium, or if people have questions that they want to address to the sheriff, feel free to do that as well. Supervisor Hanson. No.
Good afternoon. What's that?
Can we hear the question?
Yeah. How does it appear on the ballot is what I wanted to know. Do you know how it's going to show up on the ballot?
No.
Okay, I'd like to hear what you have to say, and then we can answer that question.
What's the question?
Question is, how does it read on the ballot?
I don't know that.
Yeah. Adam's leaving. As we ask people to vote yes, I'd like to know how it reads on the ballot, so we could say, hey, vote yes on.
I can read it to you if you want me to. Supervisor Hanson, I can read it.
That'd be great.
Haven't you seen that yet?
Have you?
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't seen it.
It was in the resolution.
It's a little long, but I can read it. So, under state law, the increase in the levy for St. Croix County for the tax to be imposed for the next fiscal year, 2025, is limited to 2% based on St. Croix County's best estimate, which results in a levy of $46 million and odd dollars. Shall St. Croix County be allowed to exceed this limit and increase the levy for the next fiscal year, 2025, for the purpose of hiring 2 mental health co-responders, 1 youth justice early intervention specialist, 2 sheriff corrections deputies, 1 sheriff investigator, 1 district attorney investigator, and 1 deputy clerk of court to address the county's most pressing public safety needs by a total of 1.96%, which results in a levy of $46,898,438, and on an ongoing basis include the increase of $896,000 each fiscal year going forward. And then on the long version, if you review the question before you get to the polling place, although some ballots might have it, there's an explanation section. And the explanation section will state, a yes vote means that you support additional personnel being hired to address the increasing public safety needs within St. Croix County at a cost of $896,000 per year added to the tax levy. This one-time increase creates a new authorized tax levy total amount going forward. The one-time increase is equivalent to $5 per $100,000 of property value. A no vote means that you do not support additional public safety personnel being hired at a cost of $896,000 per year added to the tax levy. So it's a long question.
Is there a heading?
Notice of referendum is the heading.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions for Adam, I know Supervisor Counter had an observation he'd like to make. Oh, I'm sorry. Sheriff, feel free.
Question. Specific question.
Since we're looking at a referendum and we're increasing the tax levy, it appears to me that if we just had 1 month of the underestimated taxes from sales tax, we could have paid for this whole entire thing as a board like it should be in the budget, not going to the taxpayers. We didn't do our job. I'm telling you that the way it looks is we can't do our job, so we have to go to the taxpayer and ask them for more tax money. I just really have a hard time with this. You know, I support sheriff, I support law and order and public protection 150%, but I believe this is an error the way we're doing it. And the other thing is when we can inform the public, but to have an advertising campaign, and we're not selling tickets to a movie, I believe that's wrong. We should put this down and let the voter decide as to whether or not, without trying to put a pretty package on it and dress it up. This really bothers me that we're in that environment. And again, I support you 150%, but right now, we just use the 2 months that are average that we come in. It would be $2,084,000. It's that money's there, and it should be used for what we're supposed to be using it for. I'm sorry, I'll get off my soapboxes.
Supervisor Van Summeren and then Supervisor Shirley.
I got a question for Adam. And that is this: is there anything that we as supervisors can do to help push this along? I mean, you're putting this together, but is there something that we can do to help you do this, to help you make this better known, for instance?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a matter of talking with your constituents. So I'm not telling you that you should go out and do it, but if you want to go and talk with your constituents, you can use the information that I'm giving you to go out there and talk with them. And that's really what this is about. I'm looking at providing the information that you need to answer the questions or to talk with people about it.
Supervisor Shirley.
I have 2 items. One, now that we see this in front of us with the question and the explanation, I think it's the paragraph under what the yes vote means is a little confusing. Putting that in there as a one-time increase, people are going to think that this is a one-time increase. This isn't a every year increase in perpetuity, which I think the last question has said in perpetuity, if I remember right. So I guess, to me, I would suggest we change that verbiage a little bit. Second, I just had a question, and you may not have this today, but I'd like to see it, because I've been asked several times, creating the website for this. I know what a mailing campaign costs for the whole county. What are we spending, and what's our budget on pushing this referendum forward?
Yep. So everything that's been done so far is just my time and staff time pulling it together. So we haven't spent any money so far. That's one of the things that I was going to talk to you about was we're looking at the direct mail campaign and we're looking at digital display ads. So those cost money. So mail is not cheap. If you're looking at sending mail to every household within the county, you're looking at about $15,000. And that's us designing, so that'll cut down some of the cost, but then you have the printing cost and you have the postage costs. As far as the digital display ads, that's cheaper, but you're looking at about $4,000 for a campaign on that. So
I'd like to call
it
on
may
the-
come in lower than that, but that's my best estimate right now.
I'll call on the administrator or the corporate counsel to discuss what Supervisor Shirley raised with regard to the wording.
Yeah, the first question that you had was the wording and why we worded it that way. Some of the feedback we had from the last referendum was people thought that the increase was an annual increase that would go up by $3.5 million and then another $3.5 million the next year and another $3.5 million the following year. So we tried to phrase it that it's $896,000 one-time increase that creates the new authorized tax levy total is what we were trying to explain there. So it's not an additional $896 every year. It's a one-time increase to create a new max cap.
And just to clarify, one thing I misspoke, the yes and no explanation is not on the ballot. It is published in the newspaper prior to the election, and we already submitted to the state this language because the deadline, I believe, was, I can't remember.
Supervisor Shirley.
I guess on our website and whatever we create for our mailing campaign, if we could explain that a little better. I think using the phrase one time is a little misleading.
Okay.
Supervisor Counter, did you have a closing comment you'd like to share with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few things on this. One of the things that we talked about on this was that we wanted to take the time to make sure that people understood that these positions that we're requesting are truly needed positions. These are not things that are being asked for that are, well, it'd sure be nice to have type things. What you have in front of you has been worked on diligently by both staff and through time to try to figure this out. And we have to give credit to them to be able to come in with a listing like this that is to our benefit for the county. I also want to commend some of the members that are on this county board for rearranging funding as of last year so that we could look at the loss that we had in the referendum and say, hey, we do have ways to make this work. And thank you, because that work has helped us greatly improve and be able to fund some of these positions with what we currently have. One of the concerns I still have is in our budgetary process, this board has always taken funds that we aren't guaranteed, such as our tax revenues from sales tax, and we've always positioned that money so that it's used for projects that are like capital improvement projects and things like we need a roof, we need to pave the parking lot, and instead of taking those items and putting them into the budget and making it so that we have to take loans out for these things, we've arranged it so that we can take the funds that we gain and we can fund these things without paying interest. And I commend our Mr. Witt and the administration for how they've developed this. And I think it's been a very wise and a good move that's protected us so that we don't end up in a problem. With all that in mind, these positions are pretty important, and I think it's at a time that we need to consider going out and we as members of this board have to agree that we put ourselves in the position that we believe that what we're asking for is needed. And to do that, I think we need to speak with members in our constituency, whether it be through your districts and talk to your municipalities, or however you can spread the word of why these positions are so important and why we need to do this. And I think it would be to our benefit to try to have this come about and make it happen in the end. Thank you.
I believe Chairman Long had a question as well.
Thank you. Not really a question, but just a clarification for everyone. This is not really about advertising or marketing. This is strictly about education. So we want to make sure that we're educating the public so that objectively, so that they can make informed decisions when they go to the ballot box. So I just, all the things that Adam's doing, I'm a little concerned that some of these words like advertising comes up, because that's not at all what we're trying to accomplish. We want to educate so that our public can make their own decisions, educated and informed decisions. Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
For the administrator, are you looking for a thumbs up on this education program, or do you have the money appropriated for the education direct mailing?
Yeah, I think everything that we've done to date hasn't cost anything but Adam's time. I have lots of that to use. But the two things that do have a cost are that direct mailer and the other digital advertising. So those things I can find a space in the budget for that, but it's really, we're questioning whether we should take that step or not take that step. So I was looking for feedback on whether to spend the money on those items or not. So if you had a strong preference, I'd be happy to hear what that is from all of you.
That being the case, I believe pretty strongly that we should continue with the direct mailing. It's the one thing I think that we didn't do last time. Well-created direct mailing that then would have a URL code or whatever you call it to let people then go for a deeper dive that used simple words like vote yes for public safety and ask people to join in to support our sheriff's department. And it would be, I think it would be very helpful and very important. And I would fully support and ask everybody to fully support spending the money to do the direct mailing.
Yeah, so one of the things we do with education is we try never to say, please vote yes or vote yes on this. We try to say, if you vote yes for this, this is what it is, and if you vote no, this is what it is. So we do try to, very much as Chair Long had said, it's about education of the voters, and we are not trying to persuade anyone, only to inform them so that they can make their own decision.
You have to forgive me. I don't have an opponent in the election, so I have this disease, I stand corrected.
Supervisor Van Sumeren.
Thank you. We were just heard the report about how well our county is covered with the internet. And we're talking about $15,000 for direct mail. I'm opposed to direct mail because once in a while I happen to pop into the post office to mail something or pick it up, and in the wastebasket there I find all the mailings that are these kinds of mailings from whatever it may be, and I think that's a waste of time. However, with that said, every time I go on the internet and I search something, I get a pop-up that says, buy bananas at Nielsen's or whatever it may be. So why can't we come up with something like that, a pop-up that when someone opens the weather, for instance, or what do I know, there it says, hey, vote for this that's something that directs us to that says, if you're interested, check this out.
Yep. Adam knows how to do that. That's the $4,000 item. That's the digital marketing.
I'm for Adam's $4,000 way. First of all, we have entered into a different age. The postal system is falling behind, sad to say, and maybe there's a better way.
To answer Administrator Witt's inquiry to us about what our thoughts were on the mailing and the digital, I would just suggest we have a quick straw vote of just raising our hands. And for those of you, I think we've discussed it pretty fully. Supervisor Burning?
I would recommend that we not do it this way, and we put something on the agenda and we vote on it as our constituents want us to do over $20,000. It's a lot of money. I think just a straw poll is not the right way to handle it, in my opinion.
Well, I would just, I think one could, I'm not quite sure how we would handle that.
Can I raise a point of order? This is an update on spring referendum status. There's nothing on the agenda that talks about coming to consensus on something and spending money, and I think it's wrong for us to do that. That's my opinion. I won't participate in it, so.
Well, I think we kind of, I guess I would just point out that, as the administrator said, that it's within the funds that he has available, and so it's not a totally new thing. I think we knew there'd be some expenditure on this when we approved the referendum last month. I think it would be helpful for the administrator to have some indication from the group as to whether we feel, as described, for educational purposes, whether we want to expend this on behalf of this referendum. So I would just suggest we do, in fact, have a straw vote, and ask those who are all in favor of proceeding along the lines that have been described by Adam and the administrator, raise your hands, and those opposed will ask for that later. So raise your hands if you're in favor of it. Well, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and those who would not like to proceed along those lines for the educational, raise your hands. Absolutely not, some say. Okay, I think that gave the administrator some ideas to the scope of how he can proceed, and we'll go forward from there. Any other discussion on this item? It did. It was just a straw vote. Okay, I think we're done with the discussion on that item, and we'll move to the business items. First item up is a resolution approving a law enforcement services agreement between St. Croix County and the Village of Star Prairie. We have 4 of those with towns now in the county. This was approved unanimously by the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee. And I would ask at this point for somebody to make a motion to bring this before the board. Who did that? Supervisor Counter moved, second. Second by Supervisor Adams. It's in front of us. Discussion. Supervisor Burning.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was reading over this agreement. I talked to Corp Counsel about this earlier. So just to ask this quick question of Corp Counsel, we have to approve this as a county board, correct?
Correct. The statute indicates that no contract that is entered under the subsection of the statute may take effect until all of the following occur. 1, the county board approves a resolution, and the governing bodies of the village and the county approve the contract.
So I have a question for the sheriff, if you don't mind. Thank you. Is this very similar to the same agreements you have with the towns?
Very similar, yes.
Okay.
Well, without, I mean, the village talks about a place to do reports, ordinances, because they had to abolish their police department first. At one time, they had village ordinances, so there are some differences, but by and large, it's very much the same.
Okay, so then, thank you. My question to Corp Counsel is, based on the concerns I brought to you earlier, do you think it would be prudent for us to push this back to PPJ to redo on some of the issues that we talked about?
So I think there's a couple of things. If the county board approves it as is, and there are concerns that can be relayed to the sheriff, Administrator Witt, and the village president can modify the agreement, and that's pursuant to provision 19, which indicates that the agreement can be amended by the parties. One of the concerns you brought to me is regarding the termination clause, and so that's provision number 2. And I know your concern is that it only allows a 60-day notice, and that may be too short. But that's a concern that the sheriff, Administrator Witt, and the village president could amend the agreement if it is approved as is today. What was the rest of your question?
Are you saying then we can approve it and instruct, well, we can't instruct the sheriff really to do anything. God bless you, sir. But we can instruct our administrator to follow through on some of the, like, just make sure that we button it up a little bit?
Correct. You could provide your concerns to Administrator Witt, and then I think that discussion can be had with the sheriff before we present that to the village president and or their legal counsel.
Yeah. Okay. I'm comfortable in voting for this then. Thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion? If not, if we're comfortable doing a voice vote, we'll do it that way. So all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. The second resolution authorizes a continuation of the self-insured workers' compensation program, and I'd call on either the chair of the admin committee or Chairman Administrator Witt to comment on that. Supervisor Cook.
I will move for approval first.
Do we have a motion on the floor? A motion by Supervisor Van Summeren, second by Supervisor Counter.
Okay. So basically, this is just a recertification of our self-insured workers' comp program. I will defer to Ken if there's any specific questions, but my understanding there was no changes to the program.
Yeah, it's a requirement by the state to do this once every 3 years. It saves us money to be self-insured, usually.
Seeing no further discussion, I think we can handle this by voice vote as well, unless there's some concern about that. Okay, all those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. It's unanimous. The resolution is adopted. The third item is an ordinance to repeal and recreate Chapter 2, Records Retention and Disposition of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances. And we need a motion to bring that to the floor. Supervisor Cook.
Approve.
Second by Supervisor Burning. Discussion. Supervisor Cook. First,
Yep, this is kind of similar to the last item that we had, but basically it's a records retention schedule for the county. It has to be updated every 10 years. Staff updated it. And you can read all the fun details in the rest of the packet, so.
See no further discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Ramberg.
Is a lot of the changes, if there is any, to that effect, have to do with digitizing requests versus paper requests and some of the things that have developed over the last 10 years?
A lot of the schedule changes just clarified and made things more consistent throughout all the schedules, but there is specific language in the ordinance that allows for departments to keep records in digital format instead of paper. So obviously one of the big things that I'm recommending all the departments to do before we move to the new building is to scan whatever records they can to keep them electronically and then get rid of the paper copies so we can save space. But that is allowed and it's specifically referenced in the repealed and recreated ordinance. You're welcome.
Seeing no further discussion, Supervisor Counter.
I think part of it too was to adapt and bring us up to speed on all of the new statutory changes in the state.
That is correct. So I apologize for the 290 pages of schedules that are in the materials. Just imagine the departments having to go through all those and figure out what is applicable to their departments. But it did bring together updated statutes, things that were non-existent anymore. It helped. I can tell you the sheriff's office was one of the departments where there's separate divisions, and so they list them all by patrol division, detective division, and the schedules were different between the divisions. For instance, incident reports had to be maintained for 10 years in one division and permanently in another division. Well, that doesn't make any sense when it's all the sheriff's office. So those things were just corrected and modified so they're all consistent. And you're right, they all added the updated statutes and ordinances and code requirements that were applicable.
Supervisor Hanson.
Is Health and Human Services and HIPAA requirements listed separately than this?
So HIPAA is not specifically referenced in the schedules, as that is both a federal law and a state law. So Wisconsin Statute 146.82 is the Wisconsin version of HIPAA, and then the federal code requirements. Those laws don't necessarily pertain to how long we have to keep things. Obviously, HIPAA and the Wisconsin law equivalent address what needs to be maintained confidential, how we keep those records, making sure they're behind locked doors in a locked cabinet, but don't really identify how long you have to keep those records. This records retention ordinance is just how long we keep them.
Supervisor Van Summeren.
Well, I was going to make a motion that we go through this page by page, but I didn't want to make that. But I do have a couple of questions. So we're talking about software, and you know what often happens is software gets old and nothing new will read that software. So how do we keep that? So do we keep on an old computer someplace, you know, the program software, so we can stick the disk in and do that? How do we do that with a page, with a paper? You know, you just file it and then you look it up again. But I'm guessing some of that has to be done that way. Some of that permanent stuff, anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, so the statute and the rules that are governed by the Wisconsin Public Records Board require the scanned copies be kept in a certain way. And so a lot of departments scan them so they're a PDF format. And then the PDF format is maintained either on our, what we call our N drives or our servers, or some departments, like the Corporation Counsel Office, we use Laserfiche. And so Laserfiche has obviously backups to make sure that we're protected. If the first version is corrupt or something, then there's a backup version. I'm sure I'm speaking IT lingo that is not accurate. So John Allegro can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain requirements. You know, it has to be legible. It has to be, you can't scan it so it's all blurry. That's not going to be an acceptable digital version of the original. So there are very specific rules in the statutes and that are incorporated into the ordinance now that we have to follow. And if you have any other IT questions, I'm sure John would come up here. I had to ask him to come up at the last meeting too.
I believe we're prepared to go to a vote on the ordinance as proposed. Ayes and nays on it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ordinance is adopted. We do not have any annual department reports tonight. Request for future agenda items. Supervisor Burning.
I would like one, so we can go into more detail on that $20,000 we're going to plan on the education. I'd like that as an official agenda item, please, to discuss.
We'll do that. Any other suggestions for future agenda items?
Can I make a comment on that, if I may?
Supervisor
I
Long.
think future agenda items, it may be just too late. If we take that up at the next board meeting, I think it'll just be too late to create or provide any kind of that type of mailer. So I'm not sure that that's going to be appropriate, if with all due respect.
I'll second that till it gets the agenda. Thank you.
I didn't ask for an action item. I asked for a discussion item.
Right. I think Chairman Long is right that by then it'll be too late, but I think we can put it on the agenda for discussion next time around. Any other suggestions at this point?
Can we have better volume control?
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you very much. My hearing aids are whistling right now.
I know the county clerk does not have any report on correspondence and rezoning requests at this time. Are there any announcements? Seeing none, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned till next month.